Well, this is a very difficult decision to make and a fairly difficult video to make. I've spent my entire life here in Toronto, born at East General Hospital, and spent 35 years after that in Toronto, a city where the majority of my family lives, my close family lives, and pretty much all my friends. There's a few friends that live outside the GTA, but for the most part, my entire life is in Toronto. So this is a very, very difficult decision to make, but it was a decision I feel like I had to make just because of the mental stress and just the amount of issues that have arisen over the past few years, but it's been something that's been on the back of my mind for probably a decade. I'm going to address that in today's video. Now I'm going to give you the two reasons why I'm leaving Toronto. And the first one, believe it or not, is traffic. The traffic in Toronto is almost unbearable. I never used to experience it. I never really cared too much because I was never really behind the wheel. I'd either be on the TTC, on a bus, a subway, or I'd be in an Uber or just in a friend's car. But over the pandemic, I was actually able to buy my first car and I was able to get my G. I had a G1 and that was just really, I just used that as just an identification. Then I got a G2. And once I got the G2, it was like, well, I might as well get the G since it basically lets the driver's license never expire, which is really, really nice. You still have to renew it, but it won't at least expire, and then you have to go through the whole process again. And ever since I got my G, I've been driving around the city and, using the 401, which is basically almost the only highway available in Ontario. It's brutal. The congestion is unbearable, but it's not even just that, it's the DVP. There pretty much is no way to avoid the traffic. During rush hour especially, even on the streets, if you want to take a shortcut or if you don't want to use the Don Valley or the 401, you pretty much have no options because it's going to be pretty much congested everywhere you go, especially in the summertime when everyone's out and about. And I'm starting to realize that even more since the start of spring. It's just been absolutely brutal. And it's one of the main reasons why we are leaving Toronto. It's just unbearable at times. Now, the second main reason why we are leaving Toronto, me and my wife, we actually bought a house in Calgary. Yes, we bought a house in Calgary. It was not our first choice. In fact, it was probably our third or fourth choice. We really wanted to stay in Ontario, but the prices of housing in Toronto and in Ontario in general, if you want to be anywhere near a population, is just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Even during the pandemic, it shot up in price. And at that point, it was already unaffordable for most people. And now it's pretty much out of reach. And I feel bad for younger generations or people moving to Canada, trying to find a better life. And part of that better life is access to housing. And whether you're buying or renting, you really are going to run into a lot of issues in Toronto and in Ontario. And Toronto is like the worst. BC's bad, but I don't know too much about BC. I do know they have a really bad housing market, but I grew up in Toronto and I remember just basically getting out of high school and it felt like every year prices were going up by at least 5 to 10%, then really went astronomical during the pandemic. So it's pretty brutal out there. It's really tough for people, especially us. It was one of those decisions that I really didn't want to make. Again, in the beginning of the video, I talked about how my friends and family all live in Toronto. So I'm going to be away from them. And I'm not deciding to move based on work. I didn't get a job in Calgary. That's not the reason why I'm moving. We're working from home, so it gave us access to actually move to Calgary. One of my sources of income is actually YouTube, and it's not just this channel. I have a few YouTube channels, and that really did help me and help my decision-making process when it came to moving out west. It wasn't the first choice. I'm a diehard Toronto Maple Leaf fan no matter how bad they are. Toronto is always going to be in my heart. It's always going to be in my soul. It's just who I am. I was born and raised here, but it feels like it's a city that just wants to push people out. It churns and burns people. It's kind of like New York City now, but without the infrastructure. That's kind of the way I feel about it. And it makes me even more annoyed at the fact that the prices went up so much because, I had a lot of time to travel, especially in 2022. I traveled more in that year than I ever have because I had that FOMO since the world was on lockdown. And it was just once everything was locked down and we were able to travel again, I wanted to explore as much as I could. So I went to a few cities in the States. I went to Brazil and I went to a few cities there. And I have to say, Toronto, for for what you get, for what you pay for, it's just not worth it for a city like this. It really tries to be a world-class city. In some ways it is, but in a lot of ways it's not. And it feels like they're running mostly on reputation than anything else. The subway system here is brutal, and the fact that housing prices are so expensive in a place where you have basically no access to the TTC in some areas in the GTA, you pretty much have to wait for crappy buses that are almost always not like actually running to schedule. You'll have shuttle buses on the weekends. If you know what I'm talking about, if you use the TTC, it feels like almost every weekend there's going to be a shuttle bus on either the Yonge line or the Bloor line, and it congests the traffic even further. And traffic was my first point. The two main points being traffic and housing. Those are the two main reasons why I'm moving Toronto. And the average house price in Toronto is close to $1 million. I'd actually say it's probably over $1 million if you want to get closer to the core. And prices in Calgary, they were just really tempting. It wasn't my first choice, obviously. I don't know anyone in Calgary, so this is going to be a crazy move for me. And I'm nervous and excited at the same time. I'm excited for the opportunity to start fresh and start a new life, but it wasn't my first decision. It really wasn't. I was thinking Hamilton prices went up, Mississauga prices went up, anywhere in the GTA. If you're not making over 100K, you don't even have any options. And me and my wife, our combined salary, even though it's okay, it's still nowhere near what we need to live in the GTA and live comfortably. So we made the decision to move to Calgary. And if you guys want to join us for our journey there, I will be doing a lot of vlogs in Calgary. I'll probably be doing a lot of restaurant videos and festivals as well, like I did in Toronto when I was here. So if you guys want to follow the channel and follow my journey in Calgary with me and my wife, please consider subscribing to the channel. And with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a rough one to make, but I want to know your thoughts about it down below in the comment section. Do you agree with me? Do you also find that Toronto has just become unbearably expensive? I'd love to know your thoughts. Okay, guys, I'll see you in the next one.